And the office, is it tomorrow? They're going to have a meeting, a confab on the debt. It's all politics, isn't it?
Morning, Tom. Morning, Lisa. Look, talking is always better than not talking, but I'd be surprised if we get a decisive breakthrough tomorrow. The incentives are just not yet in place. McCarthy could lose his speakership if he folds early to the president with a clean increase in the debt limit. The president can't give a nod to anything near the scale of spending cuts proposed by McCarthy because they would undercut much of his domestic agenda and lose his political base. So I'm afraid market stress is still what's needed to create cover for face-saving compromise. And that's why, perversely, market complacency is self-defeating.
You and Gene Sperling have been very good at this, of trying to link this policy dynamic into Wall Street. As Lisa mentioned earlier, Wall Street seems soundly removed from this discussion, this debate. Are they correct on that, to be removed, to not worry about this debt crisis?
You know, look, it's muscle memory. And that muscle memory is dangerous because the context has changed pretty dramatically from the last time we had a serious flirtation with default back in 2011. For one, Congress is as polarized as it's been in our country's history. Second, you know, we are trying to roll over a debt stock that's twice as large as it was in 2011. Three, foreign holdings of treasuries are up to $7 trillion. That's almost $3 trillion higher than what we had in 2011. Four, back in 2011, Europe was in an existential debt crisis. China had yet to lure serious inflows from abroad. Digital assets had yet to go mainstream. There were no alternatives to dollars. That's changed. And lastly, and I think most importantly, we're currently the U.S. spearheading the most severe economic sanctions campaign against a G20 country in financial history. That creates incentives, geopolitical incentives, for countries to hedge. The debt ceiling just needlessly adds impetus to those incentives at a time of geopolitical peril.
Why do you think, Daleep, from your vantage point of having worked at the White House, of having worked at the Treasury, of having worked at the Fed, all of these different agencies, why do you think things have gotten so dysfunctional in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, I mean, the debt ceiling really is just symptomatic of that polarization, Lisa. I mean, I think it's derivative of the atomization of the media, extreme levels of inequality, and technology that allows political movements to gain scale at speeds that we haven't seen before. And look, now we're on the cusp of doing something that great powers just don't do. They don't default. They don't talk about default. They don't think about default. And your measure of greatness is when no country questions whether you would ever do so. So it's brought us to this point.
Some people would say, Daleep, that there already are economic consequences to even having this discussion in such real time. And given the fact that it does have a different kind of more polarized nature to it, what are the longer term impacts, even if there is a solution that is found at the last minute when the market finally wakes up and applies the real pressure that Washington's waiting for?
Lisa, dollar primacy is a national treasure. It allows us to fund our government at 20 to 50 basis points cheaper than it otherwise would. That adds up to real money, $150 billion for every 50 basis points on treasury yields. It allows us to absorb a shock like the 2011 downgrade of our credit rating, and it allows us to deliver a shock. All of that is being put at risk in terms of the long-term scarring effects of this type of debate. Just remember, dollar primacy is nothing more than a network, okay? It's rooted in trust and inertia and an assumed lack of alternatives. But every network, whether it's in biology or ecology or in finance, they have tipping points. They're usually psychological tipping points that you can't see in advance. And we're now pushing ourselves towards what I would consider to be a very dangerous place the closer we get to the X date. So this is very serious. A lot is at stake.